That's you. And you know, outside, the world is the same. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Nature is the same. Um, it's just beautiful. Things have not changed except for our expectation of how things are. That has changed. And so we've got to adjust to that. Um, we were used to the world being one way, and we've got to get used to the world the next way that it is. And this short-term crisis evaluation adjustment that we're in. I got to tell you a story about Brer Rabbit. It's a Brer Rabbit story, and it's about Craney Crow. So Craney Crow was not from around here. He was flying through. He was headed north, headed home to be around his peeps, and it was getting kind of dark, a little bit later than it is right now, kind of dark 30, kind of dusky, and he was looking for a place to land and to sleep, and he was flying along big broad river, and along there was lots of sloughs and swamps and some ponds and things, and he saw a place that looked good, and he started to glide down and saw some trees and some other birds there, and he flew into a tree, and he was so surprised that all the birds there were sleeping without their heads. None of them had a head. Craney Crow was bumfuzzled and confused and didn't know what was going on. And he looked around and he walked around and he hopped down and he checked on all the limbs, and none of the birds around there had heads. Craney Crow was surprised. He'd never seen anything like this. This was a different kind of place that he was in. He was used to folks sleeping with their heads on, and obviously all these birds had taken their heads off to go to sleep. Now, you know, because you're a birder like me, and sometimes ducks and swans and geese and things will tuck their head up under their wing while they're sleeping. Can't see Father Goose and Mother Goose. We got a nest and set of geese out here that'll do that sometimes. They'll tuck their head under the wing. Craney Crow didn't know this, and he was so surprised he couldn't figure it out. And just about that time, as he's walking around, because it's getting darker and he's ready to go to sleep, he sees a pair of eyes kind of coming in close and looking at him sort of close, and it was kind of scary to him, kind of like that was. And so it turned out to be old Sly Brer Fox. And Sly Brer Fox, he was smart and manipulative and cool, and he walked on up and says, "Howdy, stranger, I can tell you're not from around here." And Craney Crow says, "Sure enough, I'm not, and I was flying in here to get a little rest, and I'm so surprised, because ain't none of these birds got any heads, and I've never been around birds without any heads." So I'm wondering about my camera being sideways and what that means, but I guess we're just going to go with it, okay? So Craney Crow says, "I've never seen anything like this." And Brer Fox says, "Sure enough, that's the way it is around here, because we got some awful bugs around here. We got mosquitoes and mites and no-see-ums and skeeter hawks about as big as a buzzard, and they will bite you. And so all the birds, they take their heads off at night so they can get a good night's sleep. Otherwise, you'd have bugs in your eyes and in your ears and biting on your nose and all those tender places. And so they just take their heads off at night before they go to sleep." And Craney Crow said, "Well, I've never been in a place like this where folks take their heads off at night to sleep, but I could sure see how it might be a smart thing to do, because I hate it when I'm sleeping and the bugs start bothering me." And Craney Crow started scratching his chin a little bit, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I've never been in a place like this. I have no idea how these birds are taking their heads off." And Brer Fox said, "Well, Shaw, don't worry about that. All the other birds, they hire me out for that. That's what they do. They hire me out to take their heads off at night, put them in a safe place, let them sleep all night long. That's what they do. And so I don't mind doing it. It's no problem to me to take their heads off and let them sleep all night long." And Craney Crow said, "Well, I've never been in a place like this, but if that's what y'all do down here, I guess that's what I'll do so I can get me a good night's sleep. I sure need one." And Brer Fox says, "Well, if you'll just stretch out your neck a little bit, I'll help you out. You'll get a good night's sleep." And Craney Crow, silly old bird that he was, crane or crow or egret or heron, I don't know, he's sticking his neck out, and Brer Fox is about to chomp him. He's opening his mouth and he's just salivating, and just about then, whack! Along comes old Brer Rabbit, because Brer Rabbit had come up on the scene just at that time, and knocked him in the back of the head, thumped him with his big old hind feet, and knocked him down, and Craney Crow got so scared by the whole thing he didn't know what was going on. He just hopped up in the air and flew on further. He was headed on home. He figured, I'll just make it all night and I'll get home and I'll be safe there. And Brer Fox didn't know what to think. He's sputtering and spitting as he's sliding across the ground. Brer Rabbit done knocked him to the ground, about knocked his breath out of him. And Brer Rabbit, you know, he's always winning, so he's giggling and laughing and snorting because Brer Fox sure had him a good supper planned, probably like the supper you just had him a good supper planned, and he wasn't going to get that good supper tonight because Brer Rabbit had knocked him off of it. So Brer Rabbit went home happy. And that's the end of the story. Now, there's a couple things going on in that story. One is, you might think, and it's important, don't be like everybody else. If you try to look like everybody else, you might lose your head like Craney Crow almost did. And now is certainly a time that we do need to pay attention to acting like everybody else. And we're doing a good job with keeping our distance and being kind to each other and doing good things. So that part's good. But you got to be different with how you see your own time right now. You might redecorate a room. I've said this before because I'm thinking about Mackenzie. That's what she's doing. She's redoing a whole boathouse. She thinks she's Chip and JoJo both. Or doing a puzzle. You know who you are. And all the good things you can do. So you can do those individual things. That's important. But I really am telling you this story about Craney Crow almost losing his head because if it weren't for his unknown friend, Brer Rabbit, showing up just in the nick of time, he surely would have been Brer Fox's dinner, and you don't want to be Brer Fox's dinner. So Craney Crow made it through that story, made it to his house that night because Brer Rabbit, out of nowhere, did a good deed. And he knocked that old evil coronavirus Brer Fox off of him and gave him some respite so he could get home. So you never know what little act of kindness you're doing might serve a greater purpose. Kathy Hackles, that's for you because I appreciate you appreciating my Brer Rabbit and you saying that little story knocked a little bit of that pandemic off of you. This thing is pressure and it gets on top of us and everybody feels it, and that doesn't feel good. Nobody likes that part of it. So if we can do one good thing, and you already are, I know you are, I've heard you telling the stories where you take some groceries to somebody and leave them on the porch. Call a friend. A lot of good friends to call. Thank you, good old Fred from Virginia calling down to John. Those are important things. Send some text. I appreciate so much friends who have called and texted me, and I'm trying to reach out to folks as I know you are. So be that Brer Rabbit good friend knocking old evil Brer Fox off of Craney Crow, and we'll keep our heads. How about that? All right. Good to see you tonight. We'll do it again sometime. Thank you.